Chapter 1171. After unleashing his fury of the masses, Tang Wulin's blue-silver golden ray began to take effect. In the instant that the elemental stripping effect manifested itself, the chill in the surrounding air abated significantly. At the same time, Tang Wulin flapped his wings, and instead of giving the blue-silver golden ray more time to exert its elemental stripping effect, he immediately unleashed an attack. He had never sought to completely restrict Wu Zhangkong using his blue-silver golden ray. That was completely unrealistic. Instead, what he was trying to do was to use the blue-silver golden ray's ability to affect Wu Zhangkong and disrupt him as he unleashed his abilities. Tang Wulin had undoubtedly already accomplished this. In the face of his fury of the masses and the effect of the blue-silver golden ray, the continuous string of attacks he had prepared had already faltered. It was also right at this moment that Tang Wulin rose up into the air, flapping his wings to unleash his golden dragon takes flight. In doing so, he instantly transformed into a dazzling golden streak of light, hurtling directly toward Wu Zhangkong with his golden dragon spear leading the charge. At the same time, a series of blue-silver emperor vines emerged from his body before winding around the golden dragon spear as he unleashed a blood-soul fusion skill. After being disrupted by Tang Wulin's tactics, Wu Zhangkong also instantly made adjustments. Rather than engaging in a direct clash with Tang Wulin, he instantly changed directions in midair and flew to several dozens of meters away. However, his retreat undoubtedly allowed Tang Wulin to build up even more momentum, and his golden dragon takes flight changed directions in midair before continuing to pursue Wu Zhangkong. In the face of the momentum that was mounting a frenzy within the golden dragon spear, Wu Zhangkong's expression changed for the very first time. His sixth soul ring lit up, and he placed both hands on the hilt of his sword before sweeping it upward. Tang Wulin had a deep impression of Wu Zhangkong's sixth soul skill. This was a soul skill that required time to accumulate power, and Tang Wulin couldn't recall what it was called, but he knew that it was an extremely powerful attack. Just as these thoughts were flashing through his mind, his golden dragon spear clashed with the Skyfrost sword. Clang! The golden light around Tang Wulin's body instantly dimmed, and a layer of ice and frost appeared once again. There were even bursts of white frosty air surging throughout the surrounding space, but Wu Zhangkong's body was sent flying for over 100 meters like a cannonball. It was undoubtedly the case that Tang Wulin had been frozen by Wu Zhangkong's Skyfrost sword, but much to everyone's astonishment, the assault system titled Douluo, Sky Dragon Ice Wu Zhangkong, His Majesty, the Sky Ice Douluo, was sent flying by a single spear strike from Tang Wulin. He was only a soul sage while Wu Zhangkong was already a titled Douluo. How was this possible? How could there be such a huge disparity between them? Neither of them had donned their suits of battle armor. How was this happening? Wu Sijuo, Luo Dixing, Shu Yicheng, Yang Niangsha, and Zheng Yuren's jaws had already dropped to the ground. Was this guy even human anymore? Their former confidence had been wiped away in an instant. Even back when Wu Sijuo was being dominated in battle by Tang Wulin outside, she had thought that with her Hell White Tiger Soul fusion skill, she wouldn't be much weaker than Tang Wulin. However, she had no choice but to face reality now. The reality was that there was a massive insurmountable gulf between her and Tang Wulin. How had he become so powerful? If they were in Wu Zhangkong's shoes, would they have possibly been able to block that spear strike? Right at this moment, the golden light emanating from Tang Wulin's body reached the peak of its brightness. He was like a scintillating golden sun as he hovered in the air, pointing his golden dragon spear directly down toward Wu Zhangkong. Golden light immediately erupted forth, creating a dazzling trail of golden light through the air. This was the soul skill that he had invented for himself, the seventh of his 9 arts of the golden dragon, path of regal domination. The best gesture of respect that he could extend toward Wu Zhangkong was to fight him with all his power. This was something that Tang Wulin had already understood prior to the commencement of the sparring match, so he wasn't holding back at all, unleashing his most powerful attack right away. After being sent flying, Wu Zhangkong also instantly reacted. With his vast wealth of battle experience, he was naturally able to instantly deduce that even though he had already become a titled Douluo, his strength was still far inferior to that of Tang Wulin. Furthermore, he had also been truly stunned by Tang Wulin's blood soul fusion skills. Even so, he remained completely unflustered, and in the instant that he was sent flying, his seventh soul ring lit up as he unleashed his Skyfrost true body. His entire body suddenly began to elongate, and after being sent flying for about 100 meters, he had already reached 4 meters tall, while his Skyfrost sword had extended to a terrifying 6 meters in length. Wu Zhangkong currently bore the appearance of a white ice statue, and his facial features had become completely concealed. The Skyfrost sword in his hand had also turned into a pristine white color, and this was the most powerful form of his Skyfrost sword. It was his martial soul true body. At the same time, Wu Zhangkong's 8th soul ring also lit up. As it did so, he raised his Skyfrost sword high up into the air, and countless ice shards instantly erupted from it, causing the surrounding air temperature to plummet drastically. Skyfrost absolute zero. Wu Zhangkong sprang into action. He was still just as graceful as ever even in midair, and despite the fact that he currently resembled an ice statue, he still struck one with a peculiar feeling. The ultra-low temperature of the Skyfrost absolute zero was contained within a small range, and it formed a ball of ice before crashing directly toward Tang Wulin's path of regal domination. In its absolute zero state, the Skyfrost sword was capable of vanquishing all opposing forces. Boom! The two clashed, and everything had taken place in an extremely short time. It would have been impossible for a normal titled Douluo to have unleashed their martial soul true body and 8th soul skill in such rapid succession, but Wu Zhangkong had accomplished this, and he was facing Tang Wulin's attack in his most powerful form. In the instant that the clash took place, Wu Zhangkong was greeted by the sound of countless thunderous dragons' roars. He felt as if he were facing a burst of terrifying pressure that resembled the paramount laws of heaven and earth. But even in the face of this overwhelming pressure, his Skyfrost sword remained resolute and stable. No one could shake his determination to revive Shrek Academy, and he had injected this unshakable resolve into his sword. Thus, the clash ensued, and in that instant, everyone was struck by a sense of disorientation. The white ball of ice that Wu Zhangkong had unleashed was completely stained golden by the golden light, and it rapidly began to melt. However, in the next instant, the ball of ice abruptly exploded, and countless sword projections erupted through the air before flying in all directions. Thunderous booms rang out as terrifying energy fluctuations surged through the entire drill grounds. Thankfully, the protective barrier on the drill grounds had been designed specifically to target clashes between titled Douluos. None of the spectators could see what exactly was going on as the terrifying flashes of energy were making the protective barrier release extremely scintillating light, to the extent that they were unable to see what was happening inside. The light lingered for a long time before it finally faded, and the two figures within the barrier were revealed once again. Tang Wulin and Wu Zhangkong had already swapped positions, and they had their backs facing one another. Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear was pointing diagonally down toward the ground, and Wu Zhangkong had already reverted back out of his martial soul true body form. However, much to everyone's surprise, a suit of icy blue armor had appeared over Wu Zhangkong's body. The suit of armor was releasing wisps of white energy, and there seemed to be icy mist revolving within it. It was none other than his suit of 3-word battle armor, Sky Dragon Ice. Wu Zhangkong had been forced to don his suit of battle armor. Right at this moment, a crisp and pleasant crack rang out in an extremely audible fashion. Wu Zhangkong's Skyfrost sword then snapped right before everyone's astonished eyes. Around a quarter of the sword's blade fell onto the ground, and Wu Zhangkong's body also swayed slightly. The Skyfrost sword had been snapped. Chapter 1172. That was Wu Zhangkong's martial soul. As a soul master, getting one's martial soul destroyed could most definitely count as a heavy blow, and it would require a very long time to recover from. In a battle between a soul sage and a titled Douluo, it was the latter who had his sword broken. Meanwhile, Tang Wulin still had golden light shimmering around his body, and he didn't appear to have sustained any damage. The golden scales over his skin slowly receded, and he was standing on the spot like an almighty immovable mountain. Wu Sijuo stared blankly at him, and both in her eyes and within her heart, his stature continued to grow. He had always been so exceptional, but she didn't think that he would already be this powerful. Luo Dixing and Shu Yicheng's eyes were practically bulging out of their sockets. Yang Niangsha's mouth had completely gaped open, and all of the young students were staring at Tang Wulin with fervent and astonished looks in their eyes. Who was that, and what was going on with his soul rings? He seemed to be able to switch between two sets of soul rings at will, but even the most powerful set of the two only consisted of 7 soul rings. Despite this, he had been able to defeat Teacher Wu, someone who was invincible in their eyes. Not only had Wu Zhangkong lost and had his martial soul snapped, he had even been forced to don his suit of 3-word battle armor to withstand his opponent's final attack. What if his opponent had also released his suit of battle armor? What would have happened then? The golden dragon spear was ringing slightly as if in a display of elation, and its sharp tip was so transparent that it was difficult to tell whether it actually even existed. After being polished by the dragon-slaying saber, which acted as the perfect whetstone, his golden dragon spear was now sharper than ever. The Skyfrost sword was unable to match the insane sharpness of this divine weapon in the end. Furthermore, Tang Wulin hadn't attained complete mastery over his path of regal domination yet, so he was unable to withdraw it at will. Thankfully, he was able to control his golden dragon spear so that it refrained from unleashing its energy-devouring ability. Otherwise, Wu Zhangkong would have most definitely been severely wounded, and even his 3-word battle armor wouldn't be able to save him, as even a suit of 3-word battle armor would struggle to withstand the sharpness of the golden dragon spear. Phew. Tang Wulin opened his mouth to expel a burst of frosty white air, and his face also paled significantly. Defeating Wu Zhangkong had certainly not been an easy task, and even his dragon's repulse had been unable to completely ward off the threat of Skyfrost Absolute Zero. After all, he had only just attained his dragon's repulse and was far from being able to perfectly control it. Only after several seconds had passed did Tang Wulin and Wu Zhangkong turned around to face one another almost at the exact same time. Wu Zhangkong's Sky Dragon Ice battle armor melted away like snow and ice, and his face was also a little pale, but his eyes were filled with elation as he nodded at Tang Wulin. You really haven't disappointed me. I can now fully approve your plan. In his eyes, Tang Wulin had only attained his level of power through his experiences on the demonic island and in the military. He was extremely elated that Tang Wulin had become so powerful, and he was also stunned that Tang Wulin had been able to defeat him as nothing more than a soul sage. What could be more exciting than to have such an exceptional disciple? Only after this sparring match did he truly see hope in Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin withdrew his golden dragon spear before extending a bow toward Wu Zhangkong. He didn't inquire about Wu Zhangkong's bodily condition, as that would be a gesture of disrespect. Where are you staying at the moment? Wu Zhangkong asked. I'm staying at the Heaven Dou City Blacksmith Association. The president of the association, Divine Blacksmith Sen Hua, is my uncle teacher, and my other teacher, Saint Blacksmith Yu Chen, is also there. Teacher Wu, should we bring Her Majesty, Holy Spirit Douluo Yali, here as well? I know where she currently is. Wu Zhangkong nodded in response. All right, get that arranged as soon as possible. The Pavilion Master's death must have dealt her an extremely heavy blow. Perhaps being with everyone will ease her pain slightly. Holy Spirit Douluo Yali was the only remaining high-ranking member of Shrek Academy. Tang Wulin's expression fell slightly at the thought of her. Wu Zhangkong said, what's happened has already happened, and no amount of remorse will change the past. All we can do is look ahead and do what's expected of us. Go and reunite with your friends. I'll formulate a plan and get the first batch of people sent to the demonic island as soon as possible. Are you going to make a trip to the demonic island in person? Tang Wulin nodded in response. I think that would be best. All right. Wu Zhangkong nodded before turning and departing. Tang Wulin's arrival had truly instilled him with hope for Shrek Academy's arrival, and he couldn't wait to formulate this plan. The sooner he could send the first batch of students to the demonic island, the sooner they would become more powerful. Following Wu Zhangkong's departure, Yang Niangsha immediately let loose a comical war cry before rushing toward Tang Wulin. He was far taller and broader than Tang Wulin, and he was built like a giant bear. He reached Tang Wulin after taking just a few steps before lowering his head and charging onward. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face as he raised his right hand and pressed it against Yang Niangsha's head. Yang Niangsha was far bigger than him, but just a single hand alone was enough to keep him from being able to approach Tang Wulin any further. This was an indication of his absolute power. Everyone else had already gathered around him, and all of the younger students were staring at him with curiosity in their eyes, especially those who were unfamiliar with him. Luo Dixing smiled and said, allow me to make an introduction. You may not have seen him before, but you've definitely heard of his name. He is the leader of the current generation of Shrek's 7 monsters, Dragon Moon Tang Wulin. Dragon Moon was the name of his suit of battle armor, while Tang Wulin was his true name. All of the young students' eyes immediately lit up upon hearing this name. Indeed, they had definitely all heard of this name before, and it was no exaggeration to say that this name had accrued legendary status among everyone. They had even seen this upperclassman during the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention, but their memories were understandably a little fuzzy due to the passage of time. Never did they think that this upperclassman who wasn't much older than them would be powerful enough to defeat Wu Zhangkong. Hello everyone, I'm Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin greeted everyone with a smile. You're so powerful, senior disciple brother. Even Teacher Wu was. Tang Wulin immediately cut off the young student who was speaking, and interjected, there's no way that I'm a match for Teacher Wu. Teacher Wu went easy on me and didn't even use 50% of his soul power. All of the young students were enlightened at the sight of Tang Wulin's genuine expression. No wonder this senior disciple brother had been able to defeat Teacher Wu. It was all a result of Teacher Wu holding back during their sparring match. However, Wu Sijuo and the others clearly weren't as easy to fool as the young students. All of them were easily convinced, but they were naturally well aware of whether Wu Zhangkong had used his full power or not. In reality, even Tang Wulin himself was stunned by his own powers. He was naturally aware that he was far more powerful than the average soul sage, and that after breaking his 11th golden dragon king, he would have definitely been powerful enough to face the average titled Douluo. However, even he didn't think that a powerful titled Douluo like Wu Zhangkong would be defeated by him. This undoubtedly had something to do with the peerless sharpness of his golden dragon spear, but the role that his powers had played was certainly also a significant one that was not to be discounted. During the final clash, Wu Zhangkong's absolute zero really had affected him and made him feel as if his bloodline were about to freeze solid in his veins. However, thinking back now, his dragon core and heart had both exhibited emergency reactions at the same time, thumping violently to counteract the biting chill. Tang Wulin was enlightened as he recalled this detail. It wasn't that Wu Zhangkong wasn't powerful enough. The reality was that his abilities had countered his Skyfrost absolute zero to a certain extent. The golden dragon king had given him an ultra-powerful physical constitution, as had the congenital secret method of the body sect. The two sources of physical enhancements made him far more resistant to super low temperatures than the average person, and on top of that, he also had his golden dragon body, golden dragon scales, and dragon's repulse to defend himself, so the Skyfrost absolute zero had very little effect on him. This was how he was able to unleash such devastating power during the clash. In the face of his path of regal domination, Wu Zhangkong was immediately struck by a sense of life-threatening peril, which caused his suit of 3-word battle armor to be released on its own, and only then was he able to withstand that attack. Even so, his Skyfrost sword had still been snapped by Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear. To summarize, Wu Zhangkong shouldn't have used absolute zero against Tang Wulin. If he had used any other soul skills, they would have been far more effective, and the final outcome of the battle wouldn't have been so clear-cut. Chapter 1173. Tang Wulin quickly analyzed the battle that had just taken place. His spirit domain realm spiritual power gave him the sense that he controlled the entire battlefield, and he was able to clearly recall every single minute detail. He had constantly been improving, and in particular, his rate of growth following that battle against the abyssal plane had been truly astonishing. Luo Dixing and the others had initially been itching to challenge him, but after witnessing his battle against Wu Zhangkong, all of them immediately relinquished that urge. Even Wu Zhangkong couldn't beat him. They were certainly no match. After reuniting with everyone, Tang Wulin gave everyone a brief recount of his experiences. Everyone fell into a solemn silence after hearing about how the Atlas Douluo had sacrificed himself to save Tang Wulin and his friends. The academy may have been destroyed, but it's never actually disappeared. We'll revive Shrek Academy no matter what price we have to pay. Yang Niangsha vowed in a voice that was filled with conviction. Tang Wulin nodded in response. Teacher Wu just told me that he's going to be splitting everyone up into batches to undergo training in the outside world. The location for the training has already been decided, and all of you will most likely be part of the first group. Oh. What kind of place is this? Wu Sijuo asked in a curious manner. Tang Wulin shrugged in response. That's confidential information. If I disclose it to you in advance, it'll impact the effect of the training. In any case, I've already been there, and I can tell you that it's a very good place. For some reason, Luo Dixing was feeling rather uneasy at the sight of the smile on Tang Wulin's face. He couldn't help but feel that there was a somewhat sinister element to his smile, and it was quite clear that this was not going to be some ordinary training. No one else managed to catch on to this. They were now all 7-ring soul sages with the exception of Zeng Yuan, and even she was at rank 68, so they were very confident in their own abilities. During the past year, they had been constantly cultivating arduously without slacking off in the slightest. What about us, senior disciple brother? Will we also be able to undergo this training? A young student asked. Tang Wuling nodded with a smile in response. Of course you can. Everyone will get a chance, but you have to improve yourselves to a satisfactory degree first. We'll be sure to work hard, senior disciple brother. Tang Wuling turned to Wu Sijuo and asked, you're all still 2-word battle armor masters, right? Have you thought about your suits of 3-word battle armor yet? Wu Sijuo replied, not yet. As you know, there's no way for us to get our hands on sufficient uncommon medals here. All uncommon medals are registered with the Federation, so it'll be extremely difficult for all of us to secure sufficient uncommon medals for our suits of battle armor. Hence, we only have designs and haven't put anything into practice. She wore a resigned expression as she spoke, and Yang Nyangsha continued where she left off. The most important element is forging. I'm sure you're aware that elevating a suit of 2-word battle armor to the 3-word level is a very important step up, and 3-word battle armor masters are considered to be first-rate soul masters. However, suits of 3-word battle armor require soul refinement, and there are only a handful of saint blacksmiths on the entire continent. It's way too hard for us to find a saint blacksmith to help us, so we can only set aside these plans for now. Tang Wuling asked, if I recall correctly, you're also a blacksmith. What's your skill level? A wry smile appeared on Yang Nyangsha's face. My skills are pretty shoddy. Spirit refinement is too difficult, and it requires the expenditure of a large amount of resources to perfect. Prior to the bombing, I had only just progressed to the 5th rank, but my spirit refinement success rate is less than 40%. Even the medals for my suit of 2-word battle armor weren't refined by myself. The path to becoming an exceptional blacksmith is way too arduous. In the past, I had thought that everyone had simply been exaggerating your talents, but only after I became a 5th rank blacksmith myself did I realize just how impressive it was for you to have reached the same level at such a young age. Tang Wuling nodded in response. If it weren't for the endless supply of strength he received from his Golden Dragon King bloodline, combined with his arduous cultivation and immense spiritual power, he wouldn't have been able to reach this level so easily. Furthermore, he had 2 saint blacksmiths and a divine blacksmith instructing him. It could be said that he had the best teachers on the entire continent, and only then had he been able to progress so rapidly. Seeing as you already have the designs, you can leave the forging to me. Can you tell me what medals you require for your suits of 3-word battle armor? We'll discuss a plan, and I'll source the medals. As for the specific construction of the battle armor, that'll have to be done by you guys. I want all of you to have at least partial suits of 3-word battle armor before you get sent out for training. Everyone was ecstatic to hear this, and even Shu Yucheng and Luo Gixing's envy toward Tang Wuling had clearly abated slightly. As soul masters and battle armor masters, who wouldn't want to become more powerful? In particular, once one became a 3-word battle armor master, there would even be a match for title Douluo and perhaps even hyper Douluos given that they didn't use their battle armor. Furthermore, the domains provided by suits of 3-word battle armor would undoubtedly significantly enhance their powers. As such, everyone eagerly brought out their battle armor designs and took Tang Wuling to the stone chamber where Yang Nyangsha forged. All of the young students had been ordered to cultivate on their own by Wu Sijuo. They weren't at a stage where they had to consider matters regarding suits of 3-word battle armor yet. Tang Wuling carefully listened to everyone's ideas first, particularly their thoughts surrounding the fusion of metals. After that, he gave some suggestions of his own, making sure to satisfy everyone's prerequisites while proposing plans that would improve their suits of battle armor in the metal fusion aspect. However, this would undoubtedly severely compound the difficulty of the forging process involved as well. So metal can be fused in such a manner. You've truly opened our eyes. At the very least, I think this is completely feasible from a theoretical standpoint, Yang Nyangsha said as he looked at Tang Wuling with eyes that were filled with praise. They were both blacksmiths, so why was there such a huge disparity between them? He was far inferior to Tang Wuling in vision alone. However, Luo Gixing was rather concerned. If we do this, the difficulty of the forging process will be significantly increased, and will require even more uncommon metals. That'll make it very difficult for us to become 3-word battle armor masters. Yang Nyangsha chuckled. Gixing, aren't you supposed to be the smart one among us? Can't you see how confident Wuling is? He definitely has his ways. Besides, his teacher is a saint blacksmith, and his uncle teacher is a divine blacksmith. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. Nyangsha's right, so just leave it to me. In terms of the uncommon metals required, the Federation does keep records on the uncommon metals at the Blacksmith Association and will conduct audits periodically. But the Blacksmith Association has a private metal storage unit. I'm sure I'll be able to source some metals from there. On top of that, the Tang sect can also supply uncommon metals. Even the Federation isn't aware of just how much of a supply of uncommon metals the Tang sect has. Only the highest ranking members of the Tang sect were aware of just how much resources the Tang sect had, and even Tang Wuling wasn't aware of this information. Prior to his departure from the Blood God Legion, Cao Daja had only told him to go to Zhangxian if he wanted any resources, and Zhangxian would do his best to source them. The Tang sect had built up a vast amount of power and influence during the past 20,000 years, and this influence spread over multiple continents. No one knew exactly how much wealth the sect had accrued, but Tang Wuling was sure that it wouldn't be an issue for the sect to supply the uncommon metals required for a few suits of 3-word battle armor. As for forging, he would be able to complete everything on his own. During the past few months, he had forged the soul-refined metals required for the suits of 3-word battle armor for Araheng, Sima Jinkai, and himself, and as a result, his forging skills had improved markedly once again. Even though he hadn't verified this, Tang Wuling was sure that he already satisfied the prerequisites required for one to become an 8th rank saint blacksmith. Even if his skills were still inferior to Mu Chen's, it wouldn't be by much. Chapter 1174. Forging the metals required for the suits of 3-word battle armor for Wu Sijuo and the others would provide him with further soul refinement practice. Tang Wuling turned to Yang Nyangsha and said, I'll take care of your suits of battle armor, but you'll have to forge the metals for all of the other students' suits of battle armor. You're already a 5th rank blacksmith now, and there's no way for you to improve other than to practice more. I'll provide you with the metals required for that. Sure. Yang Nyangsha was ecstatic. He was certainly hoping that he would be able to refine the metals for his own future suits of battle armor. Even though that appeared to be quite a far-fetched goal, he still had a passion for forging, so it was naturally fantastic news to him that Tang Wuling was able to provide him with the uncommon metals for him to practice on. A major factor behind his stalling forging progress was the lack of sufficient resources. The Academy Sanctuary only had some basic daily necessities, but was sorely lacking when it came to forging resources. After grasping everyone's requirements, Tang Wuling left the underground sanctuary and returned to the surface. Long Yakshu had been waiting for him this entire time, and when she saw Tang Wuling again, she could clearly sense that there was something different about him. The brooding look deep in his eyes had disappeared, and he seemed to be filled to the brim with excitement. The discovery that teacher Wu was still alive along with 215 other Shrek Academy students naturally instilled Tang Wuling with extreme excitement, not just because it would make the future rebuild of Shrek Academy easier, but simply because they were alive. Only after enduring a life and death ordeal would one truly be able to understand just how lucky they were to be alive. After returning to the Blacksmith Association, Tang Wuling was still in a state of high excitement as he returned directly to his room before dialing a number on his soul communicator. How long will you take to get here? After receiving a reply, Tang Wuling continued, all right, I'll wait for you, and I have some good news for all of you when you get here. After that, he dialed a few more numbers and repeated the same conversation. The first step on the monumental journey of rebuilding Shrek Academy had finally been taken, and during the next few days, Tang Wuling dedicated himself wholeheartedly to forging, and perhaps he was lifted by his good mood, but his soul refinement success rate was becoming higher and higher. The soul refined metals he forged for Wu Sijuo and the others were not as difficult as the metals forged for his own suit of 3-word battle armor, and even the most difficult metals, which were for Wu Sijuo, only consisted of soul refining alloys consisting of 4 different types of metals. In contrast, Tang Wuling's battle armor consisted of alloys forged from 8 different types of metals. The differences in the numbers and types of metals used were dictated by individual abilities, and on top of that, the gold water consonants that Tang Wuling had obtained had also been a contributing factor. Even as a divine blacksmith, Zhenhua had no way of bringing out another piece of gold water consonants. With that piece of uncommon metal, Tang Wuling was able to forge the metals required for his suit of 3-word battle armor to perfection. Even Zhenhua was full of praise toward the metals he had forged for his suit of 3-word battle armor, proclaiming that even if he were to infuse no additional metals and simply heavenly refine everything in the future, that would still result in a suit of 4-word battle armor that ranked above all suits of such armor in this world. The gold war consonance was extremely effective, but even it had its limits. It could only facilitate the fusion between 9 different types of metals, and its effects were only applicable to soul-refined metals. As such, Tang Wuling would have to rely solely on his own abilities when it came time to forge the metals required for his suit of 4-word battle armor. As a divine blacksmith, Zhen He was clearly a better blacksmith than Tang Wuling, but not everyone would benefit from having suits of battle armor that had many different types of metals infused. To put it more accurately, the power of the battle armor depended on the physical constitution of the battle armor master. Without a sufficiently powerful body, the soul master wouldn't be able to handle an overly powerful suit of battle armor. This was exemplified by the fact that Tang Wuling had forged alloys consisting of 6 different types of metals for Arahang's suit of 3-word battle armor, but Sima Jingkai could only handle 5 types of metals as his upper limit. Even with his current physical constitution, Tang Wuling wasn't entirely able to support alloys consisting of 8 different types of metals. However, he was confident that he would be able to handle it after absorbing the essence in the 12th golden dragon king seal. After cultivating the body sex congenital secret method and completing the first perforation stage, Tang Wuling was becoming more and more confident in his own physical constitution. He was confident that if he were to continue to cultivate like this, breaking the 12th seal shouldn't pose too stern of a test for him. The seed of life had greatly fortified his seals, so as long as he didn't voluntarily break them, they wouldn't break on their own for at least the next decade. This gave Tang Wuling even more confidence to carry out the plan to revive Shrek Academy. It was imperative now to improve the overall powers of the 215 remaining Shrek Academy students and source sufficient resources for them. At the same time, he also had to accumulate wealth and resources in preparation to rebuild Shrek Academy in the future. Seeing as he was going to rebuild Shrek Academy, he definitely couldn't make it worse than its predecessor. Shrek Academy was once a city, the largest city on the entire continent. One could only imagine the resources required to rebuild such a city. In fact, it couldn't even be considered to be a rebuild as there wasn't even a foundation left. There was only a massive lake that remained of the former Shrek city, so accumulating wealth and resources was extremely important. Furthermore, he also had to address the current state of the Sea God's Lake. He had to completely eradicate the radiation left behind by the Godslayer missile and make the seed of life flourish into a massive tree so it could become the core of Shrek Academy. Both of those tasks couldn't be accomplished in a short time, but it was imperative for him to complete them as quickly as possible. However, in any case, he now had a clear target at the very least, and he wasn't fighting alone. Tang Wuling forged a piece of uncommon metal each for Wisituo and the others, and it was up to them to complete the transition from suits of 2-word battle armor to suits of 3-word battle armor. After that, he traveled to the Tang Sect's Heaven Dou City branch. Following the destruction of the Tang Sect headquarters, the entire Tang Sect had kept an extremely low profile, and many of the Tang Sect branches that were out in the open had already shut down. The only large branch that was still open to the public was the Heaven Dou City branch. To put it more accurately, this was the current Tang Sect headquarters. The Tang Sect originated in Heaven Dou City, and the headquarters had been established here since the Tang Sect was founded 20,000 years ago. After returning to Heaven Dou City, Tang Wuling had refrained from coming here as he was worried that doing so would attract attention. It was undoubtedly the case that the current Tang Sect headquarters was being scrutinized by countless powers. It wasn't that those powers didn't want to force the Heaven Dou City branch into closure. Their attempts had simply been thwarted by the Tang Sect. Furthermore, Molan was now essentially the mayor of Heaven Dou City, and she extended a lot of assistance toward this Tang Sect branch, thereby allowing it to continue to operate. Even so, the Tang Sect branch was extremely inconspicuous and was frequented by far fewer people than before. It was quite apparent to anyone that following that major disaster, the entire Tang Sect was falling into obscurity. After disguising himself, Tang Wuling arrived outside the gate of the Tang Sect's Heaven Dou City branch. He looked at the antiquated courtyard and the huge plaque above the entrance, and a peculiar light flashed through his eyes. He then made his way into the building without any hesitation. The antiquated feel became even more pronounced in the building. This building had already stood for over 10,000 years, but it had been maintained extremely well, and countless Tang Sect forefathers had frequented it in the past. One of the reasons why the Spirit Pagoda hadn't targeted this place was because its founder, Spirit High Douluo, had once grown up here. This was the Tang Sect branch established by him and his generation of Shrek's 7 monsters. So despite the animosity the Spirit Pagoda harbored toward the Tang Sect, they refrained from targeting this branch as a gesture of respect to their founder. As for other powers, there were many who wanted to target this branch, but they would face immense pressure by doing so. The Tang Sect had been founded by Tang San, and the founder of the Spirit Pagoda, had grown up at this branch. These were 2 legendary figures that received unanimous consensus from historians as 2 beings who had most definitely already become gods. Hence, even the evil faction of the federal government decided to take no further action toward this new Tang Sect headquarters after an internal conference. After all, the Tang Sect was already keeping a very low profile, and it would be wise not to overly repress them. Otherwise, if the Tang Sect were to retaliate, it would spell some major issues. At the very least, the current situation suggested that the Tang Sect was being very sensible and displayed no intention to oppose the Federation. Compared to the Spirit Pagoda, which was at the very height of its powers, the Tang Sect was far inferior anyway. Tang Wuling continued onward, yet he was stopped in his path by a pair of young men in Tang Sect uniforms before he could even pass through the second courtyard. Chapter 1175. Who are you and what business do you have here? One of the young men asked in a serious voice. The current Tang Sect received very few visitors, and even though the Federation hadn't released any new policies that targeted the Tang Sect, all of the major powers knew why the sect was falling into obscurity. Thus, the Tang Sect naturally received fewer and fewer visitors. On this day, Tang Wuling had disguised himself into a middle-aged man in his 40s who was extremely mundane in terms of height, figure, and appearance. I'm here to discuss a business deal. The heartless one denies his innermost feelings, while the amorous one is left to rue what could have been. Tang Wuling replied with a smile. Surprised looks flashed through both of the young men's eyes upon hearing this. The one who had just spoken made an inviting hand gesture toward Tang Wuling and said, "Please come with me." He then led Tang Wuling further into the branch. Meanwhile, in a completely nondescript house not far away from the Tang Sect headquarters, in direct contrast to the mundane exterior of the house, the interior was like a scene straight out of a science fiction world, and it was filled with all types of complex and intricate devices. Who is that? There were 3 people in the room who were staring at a screen. If Tang Wuling were present, he would have definitely been able to identify that the images being depicted on the screen were none other than those of the courtyard within the Tang Sect headquarters. The images were shot from a bird's eye perspective, but they were extremely clear. I don't know, I've never seen this man before, so he's most likely not a member of the Tang Sect. He seems really ordinary, but he's so ordinary that I can't help but be suspicious. Should we report this to the higher-ups? Don't be so quick to jump to conclusions. Let's keep observing first. It's going to be very hard for us to continue to observe him after he enters the building, though. The Tang Sect has internal masking systems, and we've tried to infiltrate the building many times to install surveillance devices, all to no avail. Activate the thermal imaging analysis device and analyze him before he enters the building. A middle-aged man who was sitting at the center of the trio instructed. Yes. The other 2 people in the room immediately sprang into action, and Tang Wuling's body began to turn red on the screen, clearly being viewed through thermal imaging devices. His blood essence is significantly more powerful than a normal person, and his heartbeat is quite strong. It's beating around 45 times a minute, which is on par with that of a very healthy human. He's not releasing any soul power fluctuations, and his spiritual fluctuations are also within the normal range. It feels like he's nothing more than a normal person who exercises regularly. All right, keep observing him. Then, the middle-aged man instructed before closing his eyes to rest. Their mission was to observe the Tang Sect headquarters at all times and report anything amiss to their higher-ups right away. The Tang Sect was nowhere near as powerful as it was during its heyday, but up until recently, it was still one of the most powerful super organizations on the entire continent, so there were always going to be some visitors. As such, the instructions they had received were to observe all powerful soul masters that were above the soul emperor level that visited the Tang Sect headquarters, then follow them after they left to see where they came from. This type of surveillance had already been going on for over half a year, but as it turned out, the Tang Sect really was keeping an extremely low profile. Not only had they not done anything in the past half a year, there had been very few powerful beings that required tracking. The members of the Tang Sect themselves also rarely ever left the building, and it was almost as if they were in semi-seclusion. Furthermore, all of the Tang Sect's business operations seemed to have ceased, and even though its headquarters was very large, it was like a large family manor that couldn't be any more understated and inconspicuous. However, the more this proved to be the case, the more the higher-ups of these surveillance personnel were convinced that the Tang Sect was up to something. With the enormous foundation that the Tang Sect had established, they shouldn't have been reduced to such a state even if their headquarters had been destroyed. They should have at least had the power to retaliate. Tang Wuling was led into a room by the young man, and after coming here, the cautious look in Tang Wuling's eyes finally eased slightly. With his spirit spirit domain realm spiritual power, he could sense all of the sensory devices around him. To put it in simpler terms, all sensory devices emitted energy fluctuations, and no matter how faint those fluctuations were, they couldn't escape Tang Wulin's detection. With his immense spiritual power, he was able to discover all of them with ease. As a result, he had intentionally disguised his own energy fluctuations to fool whoever was conducting surveillance on him. With his enormous spiritual power as a foundation, it was extremely simple for him to use the disguise techniques he had learned from the old demons to fool the senses. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face, and he sat in silence to wait. Not long after that, a bookshelf beside him suddenly shifted to the side, and a person emerged from behind it. Tang Wulin's smile instantly widened at the sight of him. This was an extremely handsome middle-aged man. In particular, he had a pair of clear magnificent eyes that were framed by long eyelashes, and he was no less handsome than Tang Wulin. He was none other than the vice palace master of the Tang sect's Douluo palace, Amorous Douluo Zhangxin. Zhangxin turned to Tang Wulin before giving him a slight nod, then waving a hand before walking into the hidden door behind the bookshelf. Tang Wulin hurriedly followed along. He wasn't surprised at all that Zhangxin had been able to recognize him, not because of his cultivation rank as a limit Douluo, but because he had notified Zhangxin in advance of the fact that he was coming. After entering through the hidden door, they arrived in an elevator, which began to travel downward. Only then did Zhangxin turn to Tang Wulin with a smile. Your disguise abilities are truly becoming more and more extraordinary. Even I couldn't recognize you. I was only able to confirm that it was you because you didn't completely conceal your aura. The elevator was moving very quickly, and Tang Wulin could sense that he was descending at a rapid speed. But strangely enough, there was no sense of weightlessness that one would associate with such a rapid descent. If it weren't for the sharp senses of his spiritual power, he wouldn't even have been able to identify that he was descending at such a fast speed. This was definitely the fastest elevator that Tang Wulin had ever taken. Even the ones at the Spirit Pagoda and the Blacksmith Association couldn't compare with it. The elevator had descended for at least 200 meters in less than 20 seconds, and it was still continuing downward. Zhangxin smiled at the sight of Tang Wulin's surprised expression. Not bad. Not many people can notice this. A wry smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. Do you have a mind-reading ability, Your Majesty? Why do you always know what I'm thinking? Zhangxin chuckled. I can't think of anything else that you could be surprised about. You've done very well, Wulin. I'm very impressed that you've grown to this extent in just a year. Tang Wulin asked, did Senior Blood One tell you about me? Zhangxin's expression changed slightly at the mention of Cow Dudger, but he then quickly looked away and harumphed coldly. Humph, that bastard wouldn't speak to me. He has ways of informing me of certain things. Oh, the elevator finally stopped, and Tang Wulin was sure that it had descended at least 500 meters underground, which placed them even deeper than Shrek Academy's sanctuary beneath the Sea God's Lake. This made Tang Wulin suspect whether everyone in the Tang sect headquarters had actually been completely wiped out during the bombing. If there was such a deep place here, wouldn't there have been a similar place at the past Tang sect headquarters? The elevator doors opened, and Zhangxin strode out first. Compared to the Shrek Academy sanctuary, this place was completely different. The first thing that Tang Wulin was struck by after exiting the elevator was the strong technological vibes here. There were all types of different soul tools positioned throughout the massive metallic space, some of which Tang Wulin recognized while others were completely unfamiliar to him. There were also some strangely shaped soul tools that he didn't know the functions of. After passing through a large door, Tang Wulin was given quite a fright as he found himself in a massive factory that stretched as far as the eyes could see. This was none other than a mecha manufacturing factory. Chapter 1176. Indeed, these were mechas, and they were being produced on an assembly line. There were over 1,000 workers in here. What the hell was happening? It was incredible to think that the Tang sect could have such a massive factory right under the noses of all of the major powers. Zhangxin led Tang Wulin toward the front of the factory along the side, and he smiled as he said, the true headquarters of the Tang sect has never been in Shrek City. That branch holds an extremely high level of symbolic importance, as it's a representation of our close bond with Shrek Academy. But this is where the Tang sect's true headquarters lie. What you see now is only a very small portion of the Tang sect headquarters, and we have a total of 16 factories like this one that are 500 meters underground. These were all gradually constructed over 3,000 years by the Tang sect and Shrek Academy. And to put it in simpler terms, the entire underground world 500 meters beneath Heaven Dou City belongs to Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. The external defenses here were all designed with Godslayer missiles in mind. Tang Wulin was truly astonished. He had always known that the Tang sect was extremely powerful and wouldn't be brought down so easily, but he didn't think that it would be this powerful. The entire underground world of Heaven Dou City belonged to Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. Wait, why was Shrek Academy included in this? Your Majesty, are you saying that our academy also has a claim over this place? Tang Wulin asked in a surprised manner. Zhangxin nodded with a smile. Over 10,000 years ago, the Tang sect faced its most severe crisis and was almost destroyed as a result. Only a few people remained from that generation of the Tang sect, but after that, the Tang sect made a resurgence, and it could be said that the miraculous resurgence had been supported in its entirety by Shrek Academy. That generation of Shrek 7 monsters were almost all members of the Tang sect, and I'm sure you'll be very familiar with one of those names. He was none other than Spirit Ice Douluo Yuao, who later went on to found the Spirit Pagoda. In order to find a way to revitalize the Tang sect, the Spirit Ice Douluo developed a series of hybrid weapons that combined Tang sect hidden weapons with soul technology, and that resulted in the Divine Juga crossbow cannon, which was the primitive form of the modern high-frequency repeating automatic soul cannons. From that time onward, the Tang sect began its resurgence on the back of soul tool production, and all of this only happened because of the support from Shrek Academy. If it weren't for Shrek Academy's extensive support, there was no way that the Tang sect would have been able to make its resurgence. At the time, the higher-ups of the Tang sect held a conference and decided to give Shrek Academy a share in all of the properties under the Tang sect. The Academy didn't need all of that, but it was a gesture of gratitude, and those shares still exist to this very day, 10,000 years after that decision had initially been made. Hence, Shrek Academy has a share in everything you see here, including everything that the Tang sect owns on the Douluo continent and Dou Spirit continent. Prior to your departure to the Blood God Legion, I refrained from telling you all of this as we still couldn't be sure whether you would be capable of reviving Shrek Academy at the time. However, you've shown us through your efforts that you're definitely capable of leading Shrek Academy on a resurgence, just like how Spirit Ice Douluo Yuao had once done the same for the Tang sect. Hence, I can show you these things now. The Tang sect will return the favor for the kindness that Shrek Academy bestowed upon us 10,000 years ago. We'll support the revival of Shrek Academy with all our efforts, just as Shrek Academy had wholeheartedly supported the Tang sect's resurgence. The bond between Shrek Academy and the Tang sect will only be stronger than you can imagine. Zhangxin raised a hand and patted Tang Wulin on the shoulder as he spoke. Hence, you've never been fighting on your own. Tang Wulin took a deep breath to try and repress his turbulent emotions. Meanwhile, Zhangxin continued in a grim voice. However, what I must remind you of is that even though the Tang sect has accumulated this much power, our opponents are still even more powerful than us. Once you decide to announce to the world that you'll be rebuilding Shrek Academy, you'll face opposition from all of the major powers on the entire continent. Hence, we won't be supporting you in making such a move until you show us that you have what it takes to do so. There is only one chance, and if the Tang sect displays its entire hand to the world, only for everything to end in failure, then we'll also follow in the footsteps of Shrek Academy. The Tang sect has been accumulating all this time, but the Spirit Pagoda has also been doing the same during the past 10,000 years. It has to be said that the Spirit Ice Douluo truly left an extremely precious heritage to the Spirit Pagoda. The emergence of soul spirits and the decline of soul beasts has elevated the Spirit Pagoda to an extremely lofty position on this continent. They've amassed such an enormous amount of wealth that it would be no exaggeration to say that their wealth is comparable to that of the Federation. Just as no one knows how much power the Tang sect has accumulated, no one knows just how much power and wealth the Spirit Pagoda has amassed, either. I'm even being led to suspect that the shortage of resources our continent is currently experiencing could be due, in large part, to the fact that the Spirit Pagoda had hidden away a vast amount of resources. Tang Wulin's heart jolted with shock upon hearing this. Your Majesty, it's quite clear that the Spirit Pagoda is plotting something, and it's very likely that they were behind the bombing. What are their intentions? A cold smile appeared on Zhangxin's face. I know Kyangi Dongfeng all too well. He's an extremely ambitious man, and he only has one goal in life. which is to elevate the Spirit Pagoda to the dizzying heights occupied by the Spirit Hall 20,000 years ago before it was vanquished by thousand-hand Douluo Tangsan. He wants the Spirit Pagoda to take over the entire world and control all Soul Masters. Tang Wolin's brows furrowed tightly upon hearing this. Kyangu Dongfang was the chairman of the Spirit Pagoda and the current head of the Kyangu family. He was a limit Douluo and a four-word battle armor master, and he was the true supporting pillar of the Spirit Pagoda. It was undoubtedly the case that he was going to be a major obstacle in the quest to rebuild Shrek Academy. But the Federation is a democratic government. Have they not realized how ambitious the Spirit Pagoda is? Doesn't the Federation have the Battle God Hall as well? On top of that, there are so many powerful hidden sects. How can they allow the Spirit Pagoda to develop as they please like this? In the face of Tang Woling's questions, Zhang Xin heaved a faint sigh. All of the major powers are supposed to keep one another in check, and despite how powerful the Spirit Pagoda is, they didn't dare to go too far when the Academy was still around. However, following the bombing, the entire situation was tipped on its head. No one could have envisioned that the Holy Spirit cult would suddenly unleash such a devastating attack involving two Godslayer missiles. The attack was simply far too abrupt, and we paid dearly for our complacency. We underestimated Kyangu Dongfang's ambition, and we didn't think that he would stoop to something like this just to clear the way for his envisioned path to world domination. A cold expression appeared in Zhang Xin's eyes as he spoke. Tang Wolin faltered slightly upon hearing this. He had always suspected this to be the case, but he was still a little puzzled after hearing confirmation from Zhang Xin. Your Majesty, are you saying that the bombing really did have something to do with Kyangu Dongfang and the Spirit Pagoda? Zhang Xin nodded in response. It's not related to the entire Spirit Pagoda, but only certain individuals of the Spirit Pagoda. Since the bombing, we've been constantly investigating everything, and through our investigation, we discovered that there are issues surrounding many of the checkpoints on the roads around Shrek City. They destroyed most of the evidence, including the video footage of the vehicles entering the city around the time of the bombing, and even those who were in charge of the checkpoints in question have disappeared. There was definitely something extremely sinister afoot, and aside from the Federation, only the Spirit Pagoda had sufficient influence to control those checkpoints. After a series of thorough investigations, we can basically confirm that the bombing had something to do with the Kyangu family. No matter how well they tried to hide it, it's impossible to erase all evidence. The evidence that we found isn't sufficient to provide concrete proof that they were the perpetrators, but it's already beyond a reasonable doubt. If they hadn't been involved, how had those Godslayer missiles been transported into Shrek City so easily? As soon as those weapons reached a certain distance of Shrek City, all of the powerful beings of Shrek Academy would have definitely been able to sense them. Evil Soul Masters alone are unable to mask the auras of those weapons as their auras are even more apparent, and attempting to do so would only lead to their covers being blown. They had to have received assistance from some extremely powerful beings, and only then were they able to effect such a massive disaster. Tang Wolin's brows furrowed tightly upon hearing this. Was the Spirit Pagoda also responsible for providing the two Godslayer missiles to the Holy Spirit cult? Zhang Xin shook his head in response. That's not something that we're currently aware of. Now then, let me answer your question. The Spirit Pagoda will indeed receive opposition from other powers if they become too powerful, but they've become so powerful that it's extremely difficult to do anything about them. Chapter 1177. Kyangu Dongfang announced the successful development of Black Soul Spirits at the perfect time while also introducing large discounts on Purple and Yellow Soul Spirits. In doing so, they've won over countless Soul Masters across the entire continent, and they've even given the Federation and the Battle God Hall a large batch of Black Soul Spirits as a gesture of support. On top of that, they've vowed to combat the Holy Spirit cult with all their might and also given the military an astronomical sum of money in an announcement of wholehearted support to the military's endeavor to instigate intercontinental wars. Following the reform of the Federal Parliament, the Spirit Pagoda managed to gain a large number of allies in a short time, and it appears that the Spirit Pagoda's massive selfless donations have weakened them significantly. However, is that really the case? They'll be able to earn back everything they've given in a short time by selling Black Soul Spirits, and it's hard to say whether those donations have even put a dent in the Spirit Pagoda's enormous hidden wealth. When all Soul Masters have to go to the Spirit Pagoda for their future Soul Spirits, their influence and control over the Soul Master world will even exceed that of the former Spirit Hall. Tang Wolin's brows furrowed tightly upon hearing this. So aside from the Holy Spirit cult, our main adversary will be the Spirit Pagoda? Zhang Xin replied. You can put it that way. Furthermore, what I'm most concerned about is that we don't know just how much the Spirit Pagoda and Holy Spirit cult are cooperating with one another. Kyangu Dongfang hails from a prominent family, so no matter how he uses the Holy Spirit cult, he'll have to stand against them in the end. The Holy Spirit cult exists solely to destroy and to seek ascension through slaughter and destruction. Hence, their goal is to end all of humanity, which makes them unworthy of even being referred to as humans. In contrast, Kyangu Dongfang's objective is for the Spirit Pagoda to take over the Federation and rule over the human race. So the two objects are conflicting ones. However, both of the organizations will benefit from the destruction of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, which is what has led to their cooperation. Kyangu Dongfang is already willing to stoop to any lows to achieve his objectives, and my main concern is that his selfishness will allow the Holy Spirit cult to rise in prominence. Both Heaven Dou City and Shrek City have been severely ravaged by the Holy Spirit cult, resulting in the deaths of a vast number of life forms, creating countless vengeful spirits and boundless negative energy, both of which act as perfect sustenance to evil soul masters. I think that even Kyangu Dongfang doesn't know just how powerful the Holy Spirit cult currently is, and once the Federation declares war on the Douluo continent and Dou Spirit continent, a vast number of casualties will inevitably result, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you who will benefit the most from that. Kyangu Dongfang is doing this to plunder more resources for the Spirit Pagoda and sell more soul spirits, while the Holy Spirit cult simply wishes to see more casualties. Hence, in a sense, the invasion of the Douluo continent and Dou Spirit continent will unite them again as common beneficiaries. Once they join forces again, not only will disaster strike all three continents, the biggest issue lies in just how powerful the Holy Spirit cult will become in the aftermath of the disaster. Tang Wolin had nothing but burning hatred for the Holy Spirit cult. The fact that they were even willing to release the abyssal plane into this world was a clear indication that there was no semblance of empathy or compassion in their hearts. I need more allies, Tang Wolin said without any hesitation. Zhang Xin nodded in approval. Indeed, which is why I have a suggestion. I think you should visit the Douluo Empire, then the Dou Spirit Empire. Tang Wolin faltered slightly upon hearing this. You mean on behalf of the Academy? But the Academy is already. If Shrek Academy was still around, then that obviously wouldn't be an issue. But Shrek Academy didn't even exist now. Would the Douluo Empire and Dou Spirit continent still take him seriously? This was quite a problem. However, Zhang Xin shook his head in response. No, not on behalf of the Academy. You'll be representing the Tang sect in the Federal Dou faction. Huh? Tang Wolin could understand representing the Tang sect, but what was this about the Dou faction? A faint smile appeared on Zhang Xin's face. Have you thought about how the Dou faction is still able to hold its own against the Eagle faction even under such terrible circumstances? Truth be told, there are at least 7 hidden sects that support the Dou faction, as well as at least 2 military factions. As for us, we are the main source of financial support for the Dou faction. Kyangu Dongfang thinks that the answer to all his problems is to kick our Tang sect's parliamentary members out of parliament, but what he doesn't know is that we are the main source of financial support for the Dou faction, as well as even the hidden sects and military factions that support them. Not only that, but there's even a military faction in the Eagle faction that's supported by our Tang sect. Tang Wolin's mouth gaped open upon hearing this. This was most definitely top secret information that few people would believe even if it were to be made public. A hint of pride flashed through Zhang Xin's eyes. Even back before the Spirit Pagoda had even been founded, our Tang sect had already accumulated an enormous amount of wealth through developing soul technology. So our Tang sect has actually had our own legion ever since 10,000 years ago. The Spirit Pagoda may have developed extremely quickly, but think about this. Does the Federation have a greater requirement for soul tools or soul spirits? Tang Wolin faltered slightly upon hearing this. The answer to that was quite apparent. Only soul masters required soul spirits, yet the entire human race required soul tools. Soul tools didn't just include soul weapons, but also many pieces of technology that were used in everyday life. Zhang Xin continued. The largest few manufacturers of soul tools in the Federation and even the largest few retailers all have ties with the Tang sect. We control over a third of their shares, and as for the other 2/3, we hold shares in around 60%. Truth be told, even I don't know just how much total wealth the Tang sect has. If we really wanted to prevent this war from taking place at all costs, we can even boycott the military. Kyangu Dongfang has his trump cards, as do we. Wealth. The Tang sect struck hard not only in its power, but also in its wealth. Tang Wuling forcibly repressed his awe and astonishment, and asked, "What would you like me to discuss with the Douluo Empire and Dou Spirit Empire? What kind of help can our Tang sect provide them with, and what do we want in return?" Zhang Xin replied, "It's very simple. I want you to encourage the two empires to form an alliance, then sell them weapons that are powerful enough for them to contend with the Federation. What we have to do is prevent this war from taking place, and only by creating a situation where both sides are equal in power can we achieve this." Tang Wuling looked at Zhang Xin in a stunned manner. "You want me to set all of these things into motion?" Zhang Xin smiled, and replied, "Of course it has to be you. Not only does a leader have to be powerful, they also have to be charismatic and have enough allies. These allies will have to be earned through your power and cannot be given to you by us. But I'm just a nobody. Can I really do this?" Tang Wuling was only a soul sage who was in his early 20s. He wasn't confident at all in his ability to secure approval from both of the major empires. Even with the support of the Tang sect behind him, he was still so young. How could he convince the two empires to place their trust in him? He would undoubtedly have to face countless issues. He wasn't afraid or daunted by the task. He was simply concerned that he would ruin everything with his lack of power and credibility. Of course you can. After you've heard everything I just said, no one will be able to look down on you ever again. Do you think I'd reveal these core secrets of the Tang sect to you before you attain a certain status? In this regard, my thoughts are concurrent with that heartless bastard. From this moment forth, you are the master of the Tang sect. Tang Wuling felt as if he had been struck by lightning upon hearing this. Zhang Xin had revealed this information to him in a casual manner, but the subject matter being discussed was anything but casual. If he were to become the Tang sect master, he would be one of the most powerful people in this world. The Tang sect had a heritage of 20,000 years that was comparable to Shrek Academy, and now, he was the sect master. Even his status as the leader of Shrek's 7 monsters was nowhere near as important as that of the Tang sect master. The Tang sect master was someone who was equal to the sea god's pavilion master. Never did Tang Wuling think that Zhang Xin would suddenly drop such a massive bombshell on him. "I'm not dreaming, am I, your majesty? Or perhaps you misspoke just then?" Tang Wuling asked in a hesitant manner. Chapter 1178. Zhang Xin chuckled. "I didn't misspeak, and you didn't mishear. From now on, you are the master of the Tang sect. Most of the past masters of the Tang sect were also the masters of the Douluo palace, and that's applied to this generation as well, so that heartless bastard has always been the sect master. However, he ran off to the Blood God Legion and hasn't been back for over 60 years. I've always wanted to convince all of the other higher-ups of the sect to join forces and abolish him, but now, he's made things far easier by retiring and recommending you as his successor. I've already discussed this with the higher-ups of the sect, and none of them have any objections, so from now on, you're the master of the Tang sect. Will anyone from the Douluo Empire and Dou Spirit Empire dare to look down on you when you're the master of the Tang sect? All of your problems will be easily resolved." A relaxed smile appeared on Zhang Xin's face as he spoke. "No, this isn't right. It's not supposed to be like this." Tang Wuling gulped nervously. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't help but feel that Zhang Xin was simply shaking his responsibilities and offloading them onto him. What was going on? How had he become the Tang sect master? What isn't right about this? Vice Douluo Palace Master Zhang Xin pays his respects to the sect master. Zhang Xin cupped his fist and bowed toward Tang Wuling as he spoke. Tang Wuling immediately jumped off to the side like a startled rabbit. "Your Majesty, please stop joking around." Shut up. Do you think I would make jokes about something like this?" Zhang Xin's expression darkened as he said, "Wuling, you should be aware of the heavy responsibilities on your shoulders. Without sufficient power, do you think that you and your friends will be enough to revive Shrek Academy? In order to rebuild the academy, the first thing you have to do is to attain the power to be able to oppose all enemy powers. Do you have that right now? Even if you continue to cultivate and reach my cultivation rank someday, do you think you can make a difference on your own or with your friends? You're going to be facing the entire federation. The role of Tang sect master will undoubtedly give you more pressure and responsibilities, but at the same time, only after you become the sect master will you be able to use the sect's resources as you please and do what you want to do. You are the leader of Shrek's 7 monsters, and half of all of the Tang sect's property belongs to Shrek Academy. Only by adopting both of those roles will you be able to draw upon all of the resources. We didn't make this decision as a blind leap of faith. We thought long and hard about this. All of us will be supporting you from the shadows. You are the only one who can truly step out into the open to rebuild Shrek Academy and draw all allies to your side. What you need to do now is to get yourself to the pinnacle of the human race as quickly as possible, not just in terms of individual power, but even more so in terms of status and influence. Only then will you be able to achieve the intended effect when you step forward." Tang Wuling's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and he had to admit that Zhang Xin definitely had a point. If he were to rely on his current set of allies alone, even with Wu Zhangkong and the 215 students thrown into the mix, how long would it take before they could accumulate enough power to truly revive the academy? They had to wait until everyone integrated themselves into society before building up their own spheres of influence. It was yet to be seen whether this plan would even succeed, and even if it did succeed, it would most likely take decades to implement. Even then, he still wouldn't be confident that Shrek Academy could be rebuilt and not collapse under the intense pressure it would undoubtedly have to face. There's no need to rush your decision. You have a maximum of 3 months to consider this, and we won't force you to do anything against your will. If you choose not to accept the role of the Tang sect master, I'll head to the Douluo Empire and Dou Spirit Empire myself. However, what you have to understand is that I belong solely to the Tang sect, not Shrek Academy. As such, I can support the rebuild of Shrek Academy when it comes to resources, but we can't lead the charge. "I accept," Tang Wuling said in a heavy voice. It was only 2 simple words, but they seemed to bear the weight of the entire world. During this brief period of time, countless thoughts had rapidly raced through his mind. He knew that Zhang Xin was right. If he wanted to rebuild Shrek Academy, then the first thing he had to do was to become more powerful in all areas. "Good. I'm glad you're shouldering your responsibilities like a man should." Zhang Xin nodded in approval before urging, "In that case, it's best to set things into motion as soon as possible. You'll be setting off in 3 months, so make sure to prepare yourself during this time. Don't worry, you definitely won't be fighting on your own. You came here to pick up the Holy Spirit Douluo, right? I've got a surprise for you. Come with me." The underground world of the Tang sect was indeed very massive. Under Zhang Xin's guidance, Tang Wuling took 2 more elevator rides, then passed through 2 tunnels and even took a ride on a transportation device that was similar to a small train. In the end, they finally arrived at their destination after he had already lost track of where he was. Tang Wuling was led through a metal door by Zhang Xin, and in the next instant, he was completely rooted to the spot. He rubbed his own eyes vigorously, then immediately rushed forward, and emotional tears had already welled up in his eyes. Holy Spirit Douluo was there, yet compared to her past self, she seemed to have become a completely different person. Her long hair was as pristine white as snow, and she still appeared to be as youthful as ever, but there was no longer any exuberance about her. The death of Yanming had dealt far too heavy a blow upon her. However, the Holy Spirit Douluo wasn't alone. She was currently speaking with someone next to her. This was an elderly woman with a head of white hair, but a pair of bright and piercing eyes. She wore a set of coarse cloth garments, and it seemed like she was the most ordinary old woman one could imagine. However, Tang Wuling almost sprang up into the air at the sight of her because this woman was none other than Light Dark Douluo Long Yayu. She was one of Shrek Academy's 2 limit Douluos, and just like the Atlas Douluo, she was also a 4-word battle armor master. Even prior to the explosion of the Godslayer missiles on that day, she had risen up into the air to face the enemies that had descended upon Shrek Academy, and Tang Wuling had thought that she had perished already on that day, but never did he think that she would be here with the Holy Spirit Douluo. A limit Douluo was simply far too important for the revival of Shrek Academy, so how could Tang Wuling not be excited at the sight of her? What made him even more astonished was that he had caught sight of some other familiar figures aside from the 2 titled Douluos. These were the hosts of the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention, Lan Muzi and Tang Yimning. On top of that, there were many other inner court peers that should have perished along with the Sea God's island. There were just under 30 of them, but their average age was over 30, and it was undoubtedly the case that they were the future pillars of the inner court. They were all still alive. Zhang Xin patted Tang Wuling on the shoulder. "I told you weren't fighting alone." Indeed, he certainly wasn't fighting alone. Light Dark Douluo Long Yayu was still alive, as were so many past inner court disciples, the vast majority of whom were seniors to Tang Wuling. This was definitely a force to be reckoned with, and with their inclusion, it would become countless times easier to revive Shrek Academy. He had caught sight of everyone else, so everyone else had naturally seen him. In contrast with the survivors in the late 3rd century, these people clearly knew that Tang Wuling was still alive, but all of them still wore wide smiles at the sight of him. Light Dark Douluo Long Yayu seemed to have aged even further, but her eyes were still as clear as ever. Chapter 1179. Tang Wuling pays his respects to his seniors. Tang Wulin's voice was trembling with excitement. Holy Spirit Douluo Yali seemed to have become a lot calmer than before, and she gently nodded in acknowledgement. However, light dark Douluo Lan Yeyu's eyes abruptly lit up at the sight of him, as if she had discovered something. Immediately thereafter, the air around Tang Wulin suddenly congealed. It wasn't that time had stopped. Instead, he could sense that all of the elemental particles in the air had suddenly faltered in that instant. These elemental particles then surged toward him in unison, and Tang Wulin reflexively instructed them to stop. As a result, the elements in the air became quite chaotic, and to everyone else, it felt as if the surrounding air had become more viscous and that energy fluctuations had suddenly appeared. A hint of surprise flashed through Yali's soulless eyes, and a faint smile appeared on Zhang Xin's face as he stood a half step behind Tang Wulin. The energy fluctuations in the air only lingered for a very short time before returning to normal, and light dark Douluo Lan Yeyu gave Tang Wulin a nod of approval. Very good. You've done very well, and you certainly haven't let Yang Ming down. At this moment, it was quite clear to Tang Wulin that the elemental changes in the air were a test from Lan Yeyu. It was undoubtedly the case that Lan Yeyu also possessed spirit domain realm spiritual power, but her spiritual power was clearly far more immense than his, and she had instantly detected his current level of spiritual power. During this past period of cultivation, Tang Wulin's spirit domain realm spiritual power had already been fortified, but he still didn't know just how far he could go in the spirit domain realm in the future. After all, he hadn't had a chance to learn about this at Shrek Academy, and he had only reached this level not too long ago. Lan Muzi and Tang Yumeng strode over to him, and the former smiled and said, "Welcome back, Wulin." Tang Wulin immediately replied, "It's so good to be able to see all of you again." Lan Muzi and Tang Yumeng exchanged a smile, but a hint of sorrow also flashed through their eyes in unison. Lan Yeyu asked, "What have you come here for, Wulin?" Tang Wulin replied, "I was going to take Her Majesty, the Holy Spirit Douluo, elsewhere, but I didn't think this would be the situation at the Tang sect. The Tang sect's underground world boasted far better conditions than that of Sea God's Lake Sanctuary, so it was definitely a better choice for her to stay here. Furthermore, she had the light dark Douluo and so many senior disciples for company, so there was even less reason to transfer her elsewhere. Where do you want to take her? To where Wu Zhangkong is?" Lan Yeyu asked. Tang Wulin folded slightly upon hearing this. "You know about Teacher Wu's situation?" Lan Yeyu replied, "How could I not know of the sanctuary when I'm the oldest living member of Shrek Academy? We've been keeping an eye on them the entire time, and Wu Zhangkong has done very well. We didn't ask them to come here right away as we were concerned that some of the outer court disciples could prove to be volatile factors, but it's been over a year, so it's time to bring them here." Indeed, this was a far better place for the Shrek Academy disciples to stay than at the sanctuary. The Tang sect had a vast abundance of resources that would greatly benefit them in their cultivation. Tang Wulin was ecstatic. "That's great. I'll get Teacher Wu and the others to come here right away." Lan Yeyu waved a hand in response. "There's no hurry. Come with me." She then rose to her feet and walked into another room while Holy Spirit Douluo Yali gave him an encouraging nod. After Tang Wulin walked into the room behind Lan Yeyu, the door of the room closed on its own. "Tell me how you reached the spirit domain realm." Lan Yeyu cut straight to the chase. Tang Wulin replied, "I made the breakthrough over at the Blood God Legion." Thus, he gave her a brief recount of his experiences over at the Blood God Legion, but refrained from mentioning the Seed of Life. After all, the Seed of Life was far too important an entity, and he had to keep this secret before the Tree of Life truly flourished. A hint of surprise appeared on Lan Yeyu's face upon hearing his recount. "I see. It's no wonder, then. What are you referring to?" Tang Wulin asked in a perplexed manner. A faint smile appeared on Lan Yeyu's face, and she explained, "It's no wonder that Zhang Xin told me that he was going to make you the Tang sect master. He and Cao Dajia are a pair of stingy bastards, and I was wondering why they were suddenly being so generous by handing all of the resources over to you. It turns out that they've given you everything because you've received the approval of the entire plane." Tang Wulin faltered slightly upon hearing this. "Why would that convince them to hand over the reins to me?" Lan Yeyu explained, "Looks like you still don't know what it means to receive the approval of the plane. Any plane is an individual entity in itself, and even the divine realm is also a plane. There is a hierarchy of planes, and planes with highly intelligent life forms are known as high-grade planes, while planes that rule over 3 or more high-grade planes are known as divine realms." Tang Wulin's heart stirred slightly as he listened to Lan Yeyu's words with rapt focus. As the oldest living member of Shrek Academy and perhaps one of the oldest seniors in the entire Soul Master world, Lan Yeyu had been a limit Douluo for countless years, and it was undoubtedly the case that she had the greatest level of understanding of the high planes. Listening to her explanation would allow him to develop a target for his future cultivation. Every single plane exists as a result of energy division in space. A myriad of things could happen to the parts of energy that are split up. Some of them will simply slowly wane over time and fade out of existence, while others could transform into planets like our Douluo star. This transformation process takes billions of years to complete, and only after a plane begins to develop its own sentience will it be possible for it to be elevated into a high-grade plane. As I just said, the defining trait of a high-grade plane is the presence of highly intelligent life forms. During the process of developing such life forms, the plane must also develop a certain level of intelligence for itself. This process is known as evolution, and our Douluo star underwent a constant process of evolution and gave rise to soul beasts, humans, and all other life forms. The ruler of this plane is the entire Douluo star, and the Douluo star is a high-grade plane. Not only has it given rise to life and intelligence, it even created a set of laws that were unique to itself. What I'm referring to here is the existence of martial souls. The martial souls that we humans possess and all of the powers that soul beasts attain are affected by the laws of this plane. These laws control the intelligence of the entire planet and fuel its development. Under normal circumstances, humans will continue to evolve, and once we evolve to a certain point, we'll ascend to the divine realm. In fact, it's even possible that countless years into the future, if the humans that ascended to the divine realm from the Douluo star could take over control of the divine realm, they could elevate the Douluo star to make it a part of the divine realm. That's the direction that our Douluo star plane has chosen to evolve toward, but no one could have envisioned what had happened around 10,000 years ago. The divine realm had suddenly disappeared, and no one knows why or how. All we know is that the disappearance of the divine realm has had a huge impact on our Douluo plane as well. If you look back in history, you'll realize that the human race has produced far more limit Douluo in the past 10,000 years than in the 10,000 years before that. It's undoubtedly the case that the human race has become more powerful, but at the same time, resources are quickly dwindling due to the rapid development in soul technology. It can be said that all of these changes have something to do with the ruler of this plane. The human race has only been able to develop so quickly as the power of the plane is supporting this rate of development. In particular, in the past millennium, soul aircraft and megatechnology have completely matured, and humans have begun to set their sights on outer space and other inhabitable planets. All of this is being set into motion by the ruler of the plane. Chapter 1180. Tang Wulin was rooted to the spot upon hearing this. These ideas existed on a completely different level. To think that while he was still considering how he was going to revive Shrek Academy, the light dark Douluo was already pondering interplanar issues. Lan Yeyu continued, the disappearance of the divine realm has had a huge impact on the direction that our Douluo star plane is evolving toward, which is what led to these decisions being made by the ruler of the plane. However, from the current situation, we can see that those decisions have very likely gone awry and that the human race has developed far faster than anticipated. The rapid advancements in soul technology have severely impacted the life force of the entire planet, resulting in a shortage of resources on the whole planet, particularly on the Douluo continent. Under these circumstances, the resources on the Douluo continent are completely incomparable to what was available in the past. There's even a possibility that our resources could be completely exhausted in the future. Soul beasts could go into extinction, the ecosystem could face severe issues, and when all intelligent life forms are destroyed, then the Douluo plane will also perish. Hence, the ruler of the plane made some adjustments. We don't know what these specific adjustments are, but it's very likely that they've fallen upon your generation. Space exploration has become inevitable, and at the same time, the ruler of the plane is most likely looking to control the ecosystem or plunder more life force energy for itself. The Sea God's Pavilion master of our Shrek Academy from around 15 generations ago made the bold hypothesis that it's very likely that the ruler of our plane had connected the abyssal plane to our Douluo continent. In doing so, an opportunity has been created for our plane to plunder the planar energy of the abyssal plane as replenishment. This was a massive bombshell for Tang Wulin. What? You're saying the abyssal plane was actively drawn here by our plane? Long Ye shook her head in response. That's just a hypothesis. We don't know what the exact situation is like. It's more likely that the abyssal plane sought out our plane as prey. After all, the abyssal plane seems to have a more powerful planar ruler than ours. However, from an overall planar perspective, our Douluo continent is superior. Tang Wulin's mind was racing at a rapid rate as he processed Long Ye's words. So what you're saying is that the Holy Lord is more powerful than our planar ruler, but our plane is superior overall to the abyssal plane. Long Ye nodded in response. You can interpret it that way. From the perspective of energy division in space, the abyssal plane is more powerful as it developed sentience almost as soon as it came into existence. In that respect, it's far superior to our Douluo plane. The fact that it developed sentience so quickly meant that it was able to actively devour energy from the get-go, progressively making itself more powerful until it reached this point. During this process, it's undoubtedly the case that the best way for it to develop is to exist in an energy state. However, the main issue with that is that through this type of development, the abyssal plane won't possess a substantial form, which takes billions of years to accrue, just like the actual planet that is our Douluo star. Why is it that abyssal creatures can return to the abyssal plane as energy after their deaths? That's because the abyssal plane isn't a true planet in itself. The entire plane is a massive energy entity, and every single abyssal race is a manifestation of the will of the abyssal plane's ruler. The ruler of the abyssal plane split up its energy into countless segments, thereby giving rise to intelligent life forms before allowing them to develop on their own. In terms of life force, the abyssal plane is superior, but due to the fact that it has no substantial form, it's very difficult for it to continue to evolve after reaching a certain point. To put it in simpler terms, high-grade energy planes like the abyssal plane will be the easiest planes to directly evolve into divine realms, whereas substantial planes like our Douluo star can only approach the divine realm through a variety of complex methods. That's a fundamental difference between our two planes. However, the substance that our Douluo plane possesses gives it advantages that the abyssal plane doesn't have. First and foremost, a substantial plane is far more stable than an energy plane. Many disasters in outer space that substantial planes are completely immune to will be able to affect energy planes. Our plane is of as high a caliber as the abyssal plane, but it's far safer and more stable. The ruler of our plane isn't a tangible entity like the Holy Lord, but its foundation is more solid. Hence, it's very difficult for either of our planes to devour the other. At the same time, the biggest advantage that our plane holds over the abyssal plane is that all life forms born on substantial planes are individual entities. All of those life forms are affected by the laws of the plane, but they have a chance to ascend to higher planes. This is why there were soul masters in the past who were able to become gods and ascend to the divine realm. However, it's virtually impossible for any life form in the abyssal plane to go beyond the Holy Lord's realm of control and jurisdiction, as all of those life forms are a part of the Holy Lord. Long Ye paused momentarily here to allow Tang Wulin some time to process everything before continuing. I've dumped all of this information on you to make you understand the different goals that different planes have, as well as their different purposes for existing. As the one who was chosen by the Douluo plane, you'll be the target that the abyssal plane wants to kill the most. Similarly, you were only chosen because you possess the potential to destroy the abyssal plane, which is why the Holy Lord was willing to pay such a heavy price to directly attack you. Furthermore, it's very likely that this won't be the only time. The abyssal plane will seek to destroy you at all costs. Tang Wulin couldn't help but ask, if I have the potential to destroy the abyssal plane, can't they just run away by severing the connection between our two planes? It's not like I can traverse across planes to hunt them down. Long Ye shook her head in response. You're oversimplifying things. A connection between two planes isn't that easy to sever. Besides, even if the abyssal plane wanted to sever the connection now, our Douluo plane may be unwilling to accept such an arrangement. Furthermore, the ruler of our plane must have secured the coordinates of the abyssal plane already. So if you progress to a level where you can destroy the abyssal plane, the ruler of our plane will definitely have a way of sending you to the abyssal plane. Even I'm aware of all of this. Do you think the Holy Lord would be oblivious to everything? This is why he's so intent on killing you. A wry smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face. Back in the abyssal passageway, he had only been able to just barely force back the Holy Lord through drawing upon the planar power provided by the blood god array, then adopting the dragon god transformation with Yuna. If the Holy Lord were to attack him again in the future, how would he be able to defend himself? This wasn't a matter of confidence. The main issue was that he had no idea when and where the Holy Lord was going to strike next. Long Ye continued. There's no need for you to be overly pessimistic. I've gone through all of the downsides of being chosen by the ruler of the plane, but as I'm sure you can imagine, there are also extraordinary advantages involved. Seeing as the ruler of the plane has chosen you, it will nurture you with all its power so you can become powerful enough to oppose the abyssal plane as soon as possible. We speculate that Thousand-Hand Douluo Tangsan, Spirit Ice Douluo Huo Yuao had also been beings who had been chosen by the ruler of the plane. Your cultivation will become easier, and most importantly, you will be blessed with immense fortune and increased learning abilities. You'll even be protected by the ruler of the plane to a certain extent, and when the abyssal plane tries to destroy you, the ruler of the plane will do everything in its power to alert and help you. Hence, you don't have to be overly concerned. All you need to do now is to grow up as quickly as possible and attain the power to protect yourself as soon as you can. Think about it. How were you able to make a breakthrough to the spirit domain realm seemingly by chance? It's a result of the blessing you've received from the plane. Tang Wulin's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. He was the one who had been chosen by the plane. A contributory factor behind his rapid progression was the blessings he received from the plane. Perhaps he wouldn't have been convinced in the past, but ever since he had become a soul sage, he had truly felt a difference. The most direct instance of this was after he planted the seed of life at the bottom of the sea god's lake. There, it had reciprocated him with life force energy to bolster his 7 remaining golden dragon king seals. It was as if the seed of life knew exactly what he needed. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.